Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Erasmus Expeditions here on YouTube. We are here with episode number 37 of the Help Action series. This is a series of interview topic discussions, Q&A that I host right here on the channel, where we kind of take a deep dive into into a topic about RPGs, role-playing games, one of our favorite things. And I am very excited to welcome my good friend and my guest this evening to discuss Imposter Syndrome. My guest this evening is Kenya Pasquanelle. I hope I didn't butcher that last name.
You're fine.
Go ahead, please. Correct me.
Oh, it's actually not my last name. It's actually my middle name, but yeah, it's Pasquanelle.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, but it's just what I go by. Yeah. So yep.
Perfect.
That is
Absolutely.
It's what I tell everybody it is.
That works. So Kenya, how are you son of a bitch?
I'm doing good. Got a little bit of that imposter syndrome kicking in right now, but we're going to kind of shove it down until it just shut up and hopefully have a good conversation.
It'll be fantastic, I promise. Cole is already telling us that we both have dirty minds. I don't know if anybody is surprised by that fact, at least for me. But if you are, then I don't know how in the world you found your way here. But you're lost. So yeah, tell people where they can find you and what you get up to on the internet.
So I can be found on Twitter at twitter.com or Twitter / whatever it is. I don't know. AesirSyn. That's my gamer tag that I go by. And then I also have a Twitch channel where right now all I put on there usually is random things that I do on occasion, but I do run a weekly D&D game on Sunday evenings at 5:30 Eastern, and it's just a great group of people. Been running for almost 2 years now. Long-term game, completely random people I found on the internet, and we just all became amazing friends and gelled, and I hit the random people lottery with this group. It was great. So yeah, so just those two places pretty much. I'm not super active, but I do poke around every once in a while. You'll find my Twitter is more active with me sharing everybody else's stuff because I like to cheerlead for other people. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's always appreciated whenever I see you in chat for the games and stuff and the help actions that we do here, as well as run into you in various other places around the internet. It's awesome that your games run for almost 2 years. That's fantastic, especially with it being a group of random strangers who have managed to stick through that length of time. That's pretty unusual.
Yep. I'm getting corrected in chat, Cole, as she pointed out. Yes, I do hang out in the MTD Discord and the Run Right Play Discord a lot, occasionally in the AbTab Discord, and I play in Lloyd's Iskloft campaign he's running over on CFT RPG, which is the first Monday of every month, which is amazing.
Excellent.
I highly recommend coming to watch that over on Alan's channel, because that's just, it's so good. It's such a good time.
Alan always has really good content, and Lloyd runs a pretty sweet game himself. So
yeah, absolutely, definitely. So yeah, so crap, I forgot what we were saying. No, whatever. Go. That's where I'm at. That's where you can find me. Otherwise, I'm in audiences asking questions. I pride myself on my ability to come up with random questions in chats and stuff. So
yeah,
fine.
Yeah, I've answered a few of yours, I think, right here on the show.
Yeah,
probably more than a few, honestly. Yeah. Anybody who wants to check out Kenya stuff, you should be able to find the links to it in the description of this video down below. If it's not there, yell at me, please. So we're talking about imposter syndrome. So the first thing that I've noticed with broaching this subject with a couple of people is they don't know what this means. So what I'd like to do first is kind of give the definition that I found for it. Imposter syndrome has been defined as a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Despite external evidence of their competence, Those experiencing this phenomenon remain convinced that they are frauds and do not deserve all they have achieved. So that sounds like a pretty succinct definition of what my understanding of imposter syndrome is. Is there anything that you would like to add or correct to that definition? Just so we know what we're talking about.
No, first of all, I'm not a therapist, so this is all just personal experiences tonight. I wanted to make that very clear. I don't want people to think that I'm some therapist and I can give this. This is literally just life experiences and things from having lived the very high number of years that I've lived so far, which is not really important. I actually didn't know what it was. I always knew I had these feelings, but I didn't know what it was until I was watching an interview after being introduced to Critical Role. I was watching an interview that Matt Mercer did. And in the middle of the interview, he started talking about his own imposter syndrome. And the way he described it, I was like, holy shit, it's not just me. Wow. And it kind of just blew my mind because it was like somebody else was putting out there that they had experienced these feelings and were talking about this, because like all things related to mental health or, you know, and our own confidence and stuff, we don't like to talk about it. So it's not a very open thing. So to see someone who has this crazy show and is this phenomenal DM, that whether you like Critical Role in and of itself or not, you can't deny the man's skill at what he does. And to see someone like that sitting there and getting choked up and talking about this insane internalized fear he has of failing and it being seen as a fraud, it like blew my mind.
Yeah, it's something that I have noticed a lot more people have dealt with or are dealing with than I ever would have thought before. And it does. It ranges all over the spectrum of level of exposure or experience or whatever you want to call it. I've heard some people who have been doing this kind of thing prolifically for a long time talk about it, and they mention the exact same kind of anxiety and fear and lack of confidence that somebody who is just going to be doing their very first online game, for example, the same kind of language even. And I think you're right. I think a lot of it stems from that social warpedness that we all suffer from, where it's faux pas to discuss your mental health issues or the things that you find yourself struggling with in general, especially whenever it comes to confidence. You know, we're taught in our society that confidence equals success. And if you don't have confidence, then you're never going to be successful in what you do, whatever endeavor it is, whether it's, you know, business or talking to women or, you know, owning, you know, your own streaming service, whatever it is. And it's a shame, because I think what we're starting to see now in the social media climb that's kind of exploding over the last 5 years or so is these people who are willing to start talking about it and sharing it. We're finding these things to be a lot more universal than we've ever known before. And that's very helpful for people who are going through a lot of this stuff, to know that other people are going through it and they're fine. They're doing okay. I think there's a lot of strength in that. And I think it's something that people should be more open about. So I'm very happy that you're coming on to the show to discuss this, even if you are feeling the pull of the imposter syndrome right now.
Yeah, and it's something that I fight a lot. I fight with it a lot, and I have to sometimes just jump and do it. Kind of just ripping the duct tape off, ripping the Band-Aid off. I have to sometimes just say, I'm just gonna do it. When I started running this campaign that I was talking about before, it's the only campaign I've ever run. It's my first time DMing. And it was in a group of women, and I'm in a gaming group with all women and on Facebook, and they were talking about how uncomfortable they were because every time they ask questions or they try to join an online group, they get a lot of pushback from men who don't want to teach them or this or that. And we all know the stories. And so one girl said, yeah, exactly. And they started talking about it. And pretty soon we had like 200 women who were like wanted to get involved in this.
That's amazing.
I was like, oh, I'll totally play if you guys. And then they started going, okay, well, who's going to DM? And I was like, I sat there and I waited, and we had a few people here and a few people there. And I finally just said, you know what? I'll DM. I've been playing D&D for 15 years. And I did it because I said, well, you guys have never played. So if I'm bad, you won't know. So
that's the secret.
I was like, they're never going to know. I'm just going to fake it until I make it. And
that's incredible.
You know, I came up with I found a one shot I wanted to run on Drive Through RPG, a little 3-session campaign thing with a dragon and stuff. And I ran it and we got done, and they're like, we're going to keep playing, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I got this. Don't worry. And I kind of have just been doing it, but we have a blast. And, you know, I deal with on a lot of basis. I mean, we've been playing for 2 years. If it wasn't fun, they wouldn't be coming back for 2 years every single week. And I have to constantly tell myself that and remind myself of that, no matter how bad I think I did as a DM for that session, or no matter how many names I got messed up, or how many things I didn't remember right and they had to correct me on because they take better notes than I do. And I just ripped the Band-Aid off. I was like, well, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to jump in. And if they hate me after our 3 sessions are done, they'll walk away. And if not, then maybe I'll do it again. And I found I really like teaching people. So I will occasionally go into these other gaming groups that I'm in and say, hey, if you've never played before, I'm starting a little 3-session thing. And I use the same story every time. A, it makes it easier on me. But B, because I think it's fascinating watching different groups of people solve the same problems.
Yeah,
so
I can see that. Absolutely.
I do that. But yeah, I just rip the Band-Aid, man. You got to just, sometimes you just got to do it. And I know it's easier to say than do most of the time, but start with something small. Start with something that's not super pivotal. Maybe it doesn't have to be a game that you run online for the world to see. Maybe it's just a game that you run for people that you really respect. You say, hey, I want to run a run shot, and can you guys critique me? And, you know, I don't know. That's kind of what I do.
Yeah. First of all, kudos to you for your first time GMing being public in a very public way. That's a big step. And I still get nervous every time I run a game, even if it's for my home group, but especially if I'm running a game online, even if I'm playing online, or even these help actions. I go through the same kind of anxiety and nervousness and doubt that is a form of imposter syndrome. It's something that I've always dealt with creatively. But I think it's fantastic that you took the step not only to run a game, which is always kind of a scary thing for people, but to do so in a public venue. That's incredible. Yeah. Trying to think if there was anything else that you brought up that I wanted to touch on.
I can kind of talk a lot. So if you just want to interrupt me at a point, you know, if I say something, you're like, wait, let's talk on that, because
no, you're good. That's the whole these things. I like the fact that it's an eclectic conversation and it kind of wanders around. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and take one of Cole's questions here. We have a couple from her. Question: is there an inverse relationship between imposter syndrome and talent?
I
You
don't
want to
know.
think on it for a
Like,
moment?
yeah, I'm trying to kind of figure out like an inverse relationship. How? Like,
So I think what she's getting at is if someone has more talent, does their imposter syndrome go down and vice versa? I think that's what she's getting at.
I don't. Based on the fact, like I mentioned earlier, about how I saw Matt Mercer talking about how he deals with this, I I don't think it has to do with necessarily level of talent because, like I said, we can all agree he's extremely talented in what he does. His world building is great. His, the models and miniatures and stuff he puts together are. Oh, if you have more talent, does it go up? That's what she meant. Um.
She's clarifying.
Yep.
Can you be talented without imposter syndrome?
Oh, I would definitely think that there are people in this world that just think that they're hot shit, and
I've met a few.
yeah,
Yep.
I think that there are absolutely people in this world that are super talented and know they're super talented. Um, it's kind of, I think it's really just based on the individual. I think it has a lot to do with also, yeah, I think it's just, like I said, I think it's based on the individual and their life experiences. Were you socially awkward growing up and stuff, and then all of a sudden you get all this talent and you get elevated to this position of being an expert, and now you've got all these people looking up to you when you spent most of your formative teenage years and stuff kind of being the outcast, and you don't know how to deal with that conflict of this is where my life was and what I've always been, and then all of a sudden I've blown up and now people are looking up to me. That's a huge conflict of just everything that kind of develops you as you're growing up, and then wait, now people want to be like me. Now people use my world to run games. That's kind of a crazy thing, but I absolutely think there are people who are, yeah, talented and just they know it and they don't care.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Again, I've known a couple of different people that I can think of just off the top of my head, even within our community, that are very gifted at what they do, and they make no qualms about that fact. I think that there's a point where confidence becomes arrogance in certain people, and to me, that's a very big turnoff. But I can admire the confidence that someone like that has, because it's something that I don't have, and it's something that I wish that I was able to have more of. A long time ago, I stopped giving a shit what people thought about me. That was a very enlightening period of my adolescence, and it helped me as a human being a lot. But I never got to that point artistically. I don't know why. I don't know why that creative part of me doesn't have that same attitude, but I constantly crave affirmation as an artist, as a creator. It's something that that beast will never be satiated, and I have no idea why. But it's yeah, it's a thing that I think exists for a lot of talented people. At again, whatever stage that we're talking about. And I think sometimes that need for validation, that constant wondering if you're good enough, can push and excel people past boundaries that they would normally stop at. If they didn't have that burning question of, am I good enough? Is this enough? So I think the two probably go hand in hand far more than they don't. That would be my guess. Let's see. We'll just go ahead and roll right into her second question. What techniques do you find work best to get past imposter syndrome? We have a couple of other preloaded questions that are very similar, so we may touch on this a couple of times. But do you have anything that helps you kind of get past that feeling?
like I said, sometimes I will literally grit my teeth and I will just say, just do the thing. And I will just reach down into the bottom of me and grab it by the guts and just do the thing. Because I find once I start doing the thing, it kind of alleviates and goes away. Yes, dear, besides the Band-Aid analogy. So I just do the thing. Another way that I would deal with it is, and this is part of the reason I'm such a good cheerleader. I deal with my imposter syndrome by helping others deal with theirs, even if they've never talked to me about having it. Part of the way that I deal with my own issues with it is because I go and I support other people. I go into the chats, I ask the questions, I get involved in what they're doing. I lean on them for their expertise in something, for what they might know, for their experience. And it has this kind of weird reverse way of working on, because I'm asking these questions, I'm learning. And because I'm learning, it's helping me deal with my insecurities in something. You know, I have watched every single one of your help actions. I will drop questions. We've had chit chats back and forth and stuff. And I loved every single one of them. I've watched a couple of them multiple times. And I take from it as much as I'm asking the questions, because I want to help, you know, your algorithms and stuff. And I also just want to get information from you. But asking someone that I look up to a question about something, by grabbing that, it makes me a little bit more confident in the activity I'm doing. So I ask questions. I support other people and I ask questions. You know, I pull information from them, have conversations, be friends, you know, just support them. So that's one way. That's another way I deal with it. Let's see, other ways to deal with one of the things I've done is I've curated a very select group of people for different activities that I will go to when I needed thoughts on something. So if I'm writing something, I will go to very particular people. If I'm trying to make a character, I have people that I trust that I'll go bounce ideas off of, that I don't worry about their judgment. And then that helps me be more confident in what I'm doing. And when I'm ready to present it to the world, I have their feedback and their knowledge to help me be more secure in that.
Yeah, those are awesome friends to have. Especially people who are likewise creatives. It's always nice whenever they can give you specific feedback, stuff that's not just, hey, that's really cool, or oh, that's neat, or I don't know, it's missing something, you know, but something that's a little more directed and focused is always very, very helpful, priceless. Yeah, and thank you very much for mentioning that you have watched all of the help action videos, and many of them several times. That's very touching. It's good to know that this show is helping people out there. It's not just me chit-chatting with somebody. It's, you know, it's doing somebody good somewhere. Because it's therapeutic and cathartic for me to sit down and have these kinds of discussions. But the fact that it can then also help other people is, well, it makes me feel good. So thank you.
I may or may not have sent certain ones to my players too. So like the one on Player Agency, I sent to my players. I was like, hey guys, look at this and watch this.
Awesome. Hell yes. I love that.
Pass them around.
Pass me around. I like it. No. As far as Cole's question, what techniques do you find that work best to get past imposter syndrome? For myself, touching again on kind of what you said already, Kenya, there is that threshold, right, that you get to where the battle comes between your body and your mind. Your mind is psyching you out, telling you not to go forward. And it's something that, again, thankfully, I learned to kind of deal with when I was pretty young. In the Boy Scouts, we would go rock climbing and rappelling a lot. And the first part of rappelling off of a cliff is you have to put your heels dangling off of the edge and lower your ass off of the edge of the cliff. And having to make that part, that step, is always a psychological mind job. For me, at least. I don't have a particularly strong fear of heights, but but when you have to trust the rope that you're holding onto and just sit out into the middle of nowhere and basically sit down on air, it's hard. So there's a part where you just have to, like you said, you just have to tell your brain to shut the fuck up and just do it. You just take that one next step, and then everything else falls in line, and it's all fine. The other way that I've kind of drawn an analogy to it from my own experiences was theater. In high school, in college, was waiting in the wings for your cue to happen so that then you can step on stage and start your performance. There's that intense, for me at least, that intense sensation of butterflies in the stomach, that, oh man, am I going to remember all of my lines? Am I going to hit all of my marks? What if I go out there and my voice cracks or squeaks, or if I trip? But eventually your cue comes up and you've got to take that step. You've got to step out into the light at some point. So you just kind of have to mentally give yourself a shove past that difficult step. And like you said, once you're past that difficult part, everything comes much easier. You get into the rhythm, you start, gelling with everything that's going on with the people that you're playing with in regards to RPGs. And then you can focus on just having a good time. And ultimately with RPGs, whether you're streaming live or not, that's the fucking point, is having a good time with friends. It's not about coming off as an expert, coming off as looking like you know what you're doing or that you're super talented. For some people, that might be the case, but truly the real purpose behind all of this is to sit down, have fun with the people that you're playing with. And at the end of the day, if that's what you're doing, then you're succeeding. Do more of it.
Yeah, then do it again.
Do it again. That's right. Oh, man. Okay, let's see what else here. I think I'm going to roll into, I'm going to put this back up here for people to see. Hello, people. So as creators and content producers, none of us are actually experts. Big surprise. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, that is because creating art is entirely subjective. So the expert way of doing something is ultimately nothing more than a collective opinion of the majority. The innovators within any given community or society of creators are often the ones who break the rules that are laid down by these so-called experts. What are your thoughts on what makes someone an expert in something?
So it can be, our society has a way of judging, like you were saying, experts and what we consider experts. But I feel like a lot of people don't even realize that they are an expert at something when they are. And you kind of have to identify that. Like, are you just somebody in the community that people come to with questions about things? It's this idea that it's not just about, you can study a lot. You can study a lot and you can know it, but have you had the conversations? Do you share the information? Do you help to educate? Do you help to get people involved? I feel like someone who's an expert isn't just someone who's read a book a bunch of times and knows, but it's someone who also encourages others to learn and grow more. To me, that's what makes a true expert, is someone who wants to share with others, like these things that you do with the help action. You want to help others and you want to bring these things through. And I think as far as these are concerned, to keep the idea going, is you're kind of an expert in seeing topics that need to be discussed that most people don't even think need to be discussed or don't even realize need to be discussed. You know, you just started this thing and it's become 30 some episodes later. You're kind of really good at finding the questions that need to be asked that people don't want to talk about, you know, or people don't know need to be asked. So I feel like experts they're more than just book education. They're how they interact with the people around them. Because if you're not someone who's willing to teach someone else, are you really an expert? You may have all the knowledge in the world, but if you're just sitting in a hole somewhere with all that knowledge, are you really an expert? You're not a source of information. You're not a source of inspiration. So.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I am not an expert, and I don't know how or why anybody would see me as otherwise. But that's very flattering to hear. Most of the time, these topics are things that I'm just interested in talking about. They're things that I think I need better answers to, or that I have thoughts on that I really want to tell people. But these kinds of conversations can't happen while we're gaming with people. You know, the focus needs to be on the gaming. But I really love being able to find a topic and a guest that fits well with one another, a guest that is knowledgeable or feels passionate about a particular topic, and to sit down for, you know, a couple of hours and pick their brain over it. I love these kinds of one-on-one conversations. To me, it's a really good way to get more than just surface level information about something. Thank you. Also, one of the things that I wanted to touch on as far as this, this expert way of doing things, and that misconception of there being this barrier between the secret, I think that a lot of people don't seem to understand is, if you write, then you're a writer. If you're playing in a game, then you're a player. And if you're running a game, then you're a GM. It's really that simple. It's the doing of the thing that separates true creators from the imposters. It's not some invisible measure of talent. That's why I think imposter syndrome at its core is a folly. It's easier said than to put into practice for people, but to me, that's really the truth of it. Is the only difference between the person who hasn't ever run a game before and Matt Mercer is simply the fact that they haven't run a game. It has nothing to do with their level of talent. Now, experience and all of that is a whole different ballgame, and definitely knowledge and experience do not even out on the scale. Knowledge is very crucial to have for certain things, but it will never, ever replace experience. Yeah. And also regarding talent, I think that there's a lot of danger in the fake it till you make it mentality, because that seems to imply that there's this eventual plateau that you're going to hit, this eventual mark that you'll eventually hit with your talent, that you no longer have to fake it. You no longer have to worry about it. And that's just not the case. Confidence, I will give you. You can fake confidence until you eventually gain confidence. But some people never gain confidence, and that's okay too. Just keep faking it if you have to. But,
absolutely. I get told by people a lot that I am really confident, and I'm not, but I get told I am a lot because I do that with confidence. I will walk up to anybody and start talking to them about anything. I will sit there and I will say, oh yeah, don't worry, I got this. And then I'll figure it out. And even if I'm just on Googling answers from other people and then trying to apply it, Yeah, but yeah, the fake it till you make it thing. I never really saw it as a plateau. It's interesting that, you kind of see it that way. I always saw it more as I'm going to fake it until I'm secure enough with my ability to do it to not be as insecure in it. Like I see it as I'm faking it because I don't really know what I'm doing and I'm starting out, but maybe in a couple months I'll have this figured out and it'll be good, So, but yeah, I never really saw it as a plateau, but I can definitely see how some people would and how that could be detrimental to their ability to progress and to succeed.
Absolutely. And again, like, I've been running D&D games for 21 years at this point. Regularly. My home group meets once a week, and the majority of the time I've been the one running the game, usually because nobody else wanted to. But then it just became, I have another thing that I want to run for everybody. So, and I've been running this YouTube channel for 5 years now. But I still, even with all of that experience under my belt, I still suffer from that same kind of imposter syndrome, that same creative monster that just wants to feed me with nothing but doubt. Nothing but, well, you might have run this many games that you felt were really good and you had a great time and everybody talked about how much they enjoyed it. But this one over here, that one didn't go well. Maybe this is the real you, to touch again on imposter syndrome. Maybe this is really your worth. And it sucks. I know it sucks. But
yeah, maybe they don't really like your game. Maybe they just show up because
exactly they're being nice.
Because they're being nice, know. And yeah, we deal with it a lot. I personally deal with it all the time. Oh, they don't really want you in the group. They don't really want you to, oh, they're just telling you that thing that you crocheted looks great. It's fine. They don't really, they're just being nice because we're told if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And that's the kind of little demony things that get said in your head all the time. Yeah, I feel that. It's a fight. It's a battle.
It really is, honestly. I know that we're already about 37 minutes or so in, but one of the questions that I kind of like to get in fairly early in on these conversations is, when and how did you find gaming? How did you get into the hobby?
Okay, so gaming in general, it was my mom. Pretty
That's
much
awesome.
Since the first memories that I can actually have as a child is my mom playing some sort of game with me. And I have had many stories told to me about how when my father and mother were married in their early years and they were building my father's company and stuff, they would go to diners and there would be a Pac-Man machine and my mom would throw a dime in the Pac-Man machine and be able to play Pac-Man on one coin the entire time. And I remember, playing memory with my mom on the floor of our old house that I grew up in and stuff, like I have vivid memories of memory. Card games, go fish, everything, taking games on family trips. My mom has a huge wall of board games from throughout her entire lifespan hanging out in the basement of her house. And we on occasion will pull out some of the classic old good ones and still play them. I have introduced my mom to I've introduced my mom into more advanced gaming now. So I'm starting to get her games like trying to think of a good one. I got her Ticket to Ride, classic. So she's hooked on Ticket to Ride, and I've taught a couple of her friends how to play. So yeah, my mom got me into gaming. She plays video games. My mom will kick your ass in Rock Band drums, hands down. She will absolutely destroy you. Don't even try. She's ridiculous at it. RPGs and stuff, this is kind of weird. I've been into them since I was like 10 years old, but I didn't know what they were. And my first experience with role playing was when I was like 10 or 11 years old, and the internet first came. I'm aging myself here. The internet first came to my house, and I got online for the first time, and there wasn't really a lot to do. But one of the first things you could do that most people don't even remember now is you could get onto the Prodigy forum posting boards. And these posting boards, they were very short-lived, but it was essentially just like a forum posting board like we do in Discord with the chats and stuff. But I stumbled into this posting section where people were role-playing as fairies and werewolves and vampires and dragons, and all of this stuff was going on. And I've always been a huge reader, so this was just fascinating. This was like real people writing these cool stories on these boards and interacting with each other. And it was this interactive storytelling, and it was the most amazing thing in the world. And so I got on and I made myself my own like character. And I realize now as a more advanced role player that I actually created my first custom class at like 10 years old. Like, and I gave her like, I came up with the name. I called her, what the hell was it? Oh, I knew. I was an ethereal night fairy is what I named like this whole thing. And they had like a look, and I made up a homeland for them, and they had powers that they used. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I was doing it. Fast forward into my 20s, and I got into LARPing. I used to do a lot of Vampire the Masquerade, Vampire Requiem LARPing. I got into that stuff. Werewolf, Magic, the Mage one, just Mage, I think it is what it was called. Yeah, the Ascension. That's what it was. You know, and then some homebrew, some steampunk LARPing and stuff. And then I started playing D&D with some friends. And it was interesting because I never liked D&D. I never liked D&D because, and this is nothing against the people, it's not bad, but I came from LARPing. I came from story creation. I came from pretending you were these creatures and stuff. That's where my imagination has always been. I was the girl that lived for the bookmobile to show up, and I would use my book rental maximum and my brother's to take books home for the month because I'd read them all so fast. And the people that I was playing D&D with, I played with because they were my friends and I liked playing with them, and we had a great time, and it was a lot of funny stuff that came out of it. But it was never what I wanted it to be. And I knew I got what I wanted it to be from LARPing. It's a very different style. It's much more roleplay involved. But nobody I knew ever played D&D the way that I LARPed. And then, was it like 6 years ago now at this point? I don't know, 5-6 years ago or whatever. Critical Role came out and got really, really big. And for the first time, because I was never interested in D&D, I never paid attention to D&D online. Anybody playing online. The starter channels, not just Critical Role, but like other ones. And for the first time when I started watching Critical Role, I realized that there were people out there who role played the way that in D&D, the way that I wanted to role play in D&D. And that is what really turned the tides for me where D&D and tabletop RPGs and stuff are concerned, because even other systems, it was always mechanics. It was always dungeon crawl. And that kind of stuff was boring to me. You know, I didn't really get into it like I do with the games that I play now, because the games that we all play in as a group are so RP heavy, which is what I enjoy. They're so story heavy. So yeah, so that's kind of how I got into RPGs and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've been playing D&D for 15 years now, probably, I think. You know, it's been a long time. You know, and like I said, I still had fun. We had a great time. I could tell you stories about my half-orc barbarian that licked a multicolored frog in a dungeon and then tripped her ass through a dungeon, which was just like because that's what you do. You give the barbarian a tripping frog. That's the best thing you could do for the night. You know, I mean, I have great stories attached to it, but the RP stuff is really what turned the tide in my love for D&D and for tabletops in general.
Yeah, I've been playing for a long time, since I was about 14, and I've played a lot of, obviously not when I was 14, but Beer and Pretzels D&D, that kind of style, you know, where everything is an in-joke, you know, where people are naming their characters things like Merlin, or Busta, because they're, you know, the one that breaks down doors. And like, yeah, it's fun. You know, it's fun to get giggles and to sit around and, you know, go room to room and knock things heads together and collect loot. It's a fun way to play. But I don't think that my love for RPGs would have persisted through the years and the various stages of my life the way that it has if I hadn't discovered the heavier role-playing style of play that I did in college. And I think that gave me a torch to carry, if you'll pardon the pun, that has led me all the way up until I started gaming online. Because like I said, my home group, we play weekly, but nobody in our home group is super comfortable with deep immersive role play. It's nobody comes from an acting background or anything like that. And the dynamic of our group is just a little different enough to the point where nobody's really that kind of player. So it's always been something that I've wanted out of role-playing games, but it was never really something that I got to do much of. And I would source that through different avenues, you know, trying to do independent film or thinking about going back into theater, which God, no. It would take way too much time to rehearse. But anyways, finally, whenever I found the gaming online community, and similarly to what you were just saying, I found that there was a much heavier focus on character-driven, story-driven narratives. I was like, okay, cool. Now I have found a place where I can get both. I can play these mechanic heavy 6-hour long combats, you know, on one side, and on the other, I can get these very deep emotional things that might push me to the point of crying or, you know, really deeply invested in what's going on. And the fact that I can have both of those things, it makes me giddy. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that one.
Yeah. It's one of the craziest things too is that as much as I've said, like, my mom got me into gaming and the stories, and I remember, well, this is just a funny anecdote, and since she's in the chat, I remember relatives coming to visit and being there for a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time, because my relatives lived all over the US. And by the 5th or 6th day, my mom going, okay, what game are we going to play, guys? What are we playing tonight? And the whole house just going, oh, Cher, can we please just not play a game tonight? Because she just always wanted to, are we playing cribbage? Are we playing Pictionary? Are we playing Cranium? Are we playing this? Are we playing that? Like, it was just constant every night. Like, what game are we playing, you know? And, but what's really funny is that as much as she got into gaming, my mom never played D&D, even though she grew up in that era. She had never played D&D. And I found out about that literally like a month after I started DMing for my group. And so I ran the same scenario. The same starting scenario. That Christmas, I ran that game for my mom. And she played a grave cleric, and she had 2 of her friends come over. The one gentleman that came over, he had actually played tons of D&D when he was in the military. It was what they would do on their weekends off. They'd play D&D all weekend long. That he loved it, to actually be at a table with people playing a game and stuff. And he has since gone on and gotten involved in online D&D games now, because it rekindled that spark in him to play D&D.
That's awesome.
And so I introduced my mom, and her one friend had never played either, and then reintroduced her buddy to it. And it was the coolest thing to be able to introduce my mom to D&D and role playing. And I'm telling you, she got into it. Like, end killing blow on the dragon at the end, and she was standing up and all animated, and I have video of it, and she was super like acting it out and so totally into it. It was the most amazing thing in the world. And so now every once in a while she'll send me a message and she'll be like, so we need to get that campaign started. You moving back to Wisconsin anytime soon? And she's like, I'd like to play, more. Can we play more, please? Like, my mom's trying to get me to move back to Wisconsin to start a campaign for her so that we can play D&D together.
That's fantastic. I mean, you have to have priorities.
Exactly.
Truthfully.
And D&D.
Of course. That's amazing. Yeah. My mom just this past weekend actually mentioned something about, well, if you were going to run a game for somebody who's never played before, like, what kind of things would I need to know? And I'm like, oh, well,
hello, Mom.
It's about time. I thought you'd never ask. So yeah, we'll see how that happens. I got her to play in one of the. I ran an expedition engine game of Monster Jungle with my family, my brother, and my sister, my mom, my wife, and my brother-in-law, and yeah, it was a ton of fun. But I didn't record it. I didn't broadcast it because they were all super, nervous about it, and so it was good. But we'll see. Yeah, my family also was very big into board games. We played a lot of board games growing up. Everything from I just lost the name of it. I'm never going to remember the name of it now. Pokino.
Okay.
We used to play a lot of Pokino, Clue, Chutes and Ladders, Connect Four, all that kind of stuff. Pass the Pigs,
Parcheesi.
We never played a lot of Parcheesi, but there was a lot of board games that we did play. And we had a lot of family reunions with my dad's side of the family. Every year we would get together usually. And when the family got together, there was probably 60 to 70 of us, somewhere in that neighborhood. And there was always something going on. All of my grandparents' generation, they all played dominoes with each other. So they were all playing 42 and all of that kind of stuff and cheating left and right. But it was awesome growing up watching them play. And then at night, all the card games would start. We'd play Cadillac. There was always poker that was happening. And, everybody had all kinds of crazy names for the different kinds of poker they played. Follow the Queen and Mexican Sweat and all of these crazy different rules that would come out. And, of course, they're all knocking drinks back like it's going out of style. So the later the night goes, the looser the rules get and the dirtier the jokes. That's why I have the sense of humor that I have, by the way. So yeah, there's a lot of that, those memories that are very endearing to me. And to me, I associate that kind of loosening up and socializing with gaming. I think gaming kind of draws that out of people. So there's a quote that I love that I cannot remember who it is that actually says it, but it goes something like, you can learn more from an hour of play from a man than you can from a year of conversation. And I think that's very true, that you can learn more from a person just by playing a game with them than you can for years and years of conversation, because there's something about our true selves that comes out when we're gaming. And I think it's very indicative of who we really are deep down.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I'm a huge believer in it's something that I live. I'm a huge believer in the power of gaming. I really am. Whether it's video, RPGs, board games, card games. I live very close to, I live in New Jersey. I live very close to Boston. So PAX East is up here every year. And PAX East is one of the most amazingly fantastic things in the world because it's a giant airplane hangar that's been turned into a convention hall. And it's 30, 40,000 people over the course of the weekend. And I personally have never heard of fights breaking out. You get some people complain, like you get some guys that kind of get a little bit weird, or people that get a little bit funny with, like, the harassment and stuff, but usually they're put right in line by somebody else. Like, it's not tolerated. But what's crazy to me is that you can walk around this hall full of 30,000 people, and you get on Twitch and they have a stream going, and you put a certain tag in, or not Twitch, Twitter, you put a certain tag in, and people will be like looking for someone to play, I don't know, whatever, Smash Up. I had to look over at my board games because my mind went blank. Like, you look at somebody, like, people will be like looking for 3 more people to play Smash Up. I'm sitting at the table underneath the red flag, blah, blah, blah. And you can literally walk up to random strangers that you've never met and you'll never see again, and sit down at a table with them and have one of the best times that you've ever had. You can, as a solo person, go sign up for a random D&D one shot that they're running and play D&D with people that you've never met, and it'll be a fantastic time. And you could stop and talk to anybody about anything, and they'll talk back to you. And it's just the most fascinating thing to see thousands upon thousands of people gathered together like that. And the one passion that everybody that's in that building has is gaming. And it connects everyone without even having to talk to each other. Just by virtue of walking through that building for that convention, you're automatically connected to every single other human being that is there. And there's such a powerful tie to that. And even if you don't ever talk to them again, you never say anything to them, and I love it. I love the power of gaming. I've sold board games for vendors before, because a kid will come up and start asking questions, and I'll start going, well, what kind of game do you like? Do you want competitive? Do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want this? And all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I'm like selling people board games for vendors. And I've had vendors tell me, are you looking for a job? Like, because it is so important to me that people enjoy a game. If I'm standing there and you're talking about a game and you're looking for a certain type of game, and I know a game that I feel like would probably help, I want you to walk away and have spent, because they're not cheap, they're pricey investments. Board games can get very pricey. I'm not allowed on Kickstarter. But I go anyways. It is so important to me that someone gets the game that's going to fit them, so that they go home and they're happy, so that they enjoy it. Because if they go home and they enjoy that game, they're going to share that game with someone else, and they are going to get someone else hooked on it. And I feel like gaming has so much potential to build a community. That's why I love that it's not shunned anymore. And this is something I'm like super passionate about. Like, gaming as a community building thing is just, it's crazy. I feel there's so much power in it, so much untapped ability to better the world through gaming, which I know sounds weird, but because it forms the relationships, there's so much untapped power through community building in gaming that I feel like groups like Absolute Tabletop, and Mini Train Domain, and, what Keel's doing with Run Right Play and stuff, they're starting to be more of that out there. And I feel like it is going to do better, and it's going to just kind of grow.
Yeah, I would have to agree. There's been a massive resurgence in board gaming in general. Within the last probably 10, 15 years or so, that kind of started over in Europe when things like Catan and Carcassonne and things like that started coming out and winning awards, which I remember the first time I heard about a board game winning an award, I was like, there's awards for board games? What? That's the weirdest thing, but it makes perfect sense. And ever since then, it's been growing almost every year. It's been growing kind of exponentially. And I think that role-playing games has certainly benefited from that explosion in the board game renaissance. But I think it also has to do with the development of online capabilities of playing.
Mm-hmm.
And because of things like Critical Role. There are a lot of people out there who don't care for Critical Role, and I don't watch it, and it's not because I don't like it. It's just because it's a fucking daunting undertaking to even
starting it now? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I think I got about 12 or 15 episodes in. I was like, I wonder how many there are. And I was like, holy shit. You know what? Maybe I don't want to invest 4 years of my life to catching up. But no, it is undeniable to me what it has done for the role-playing community, at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are people who are like, oh, wait a second. Beautiful people play this game? People who are talented voice actors actually spend their time doing this for hours on end, you say? So yeah, it's not just, you know, it's not just people in their parents' basements. So I think it's really awesome to watch how much more in the public eye it is now, and not in a negative way. Like I miss the Satanic Panic, but I caught the tail end of a lot of that stigma. So being able to see board gaming, and particularly role-playing games in a positive light, as something that a lot of people are talking about, even if they're not playing it, is I'm very happy that I lived long enough to see that be the case. Okay, let's get one of the preloaded questions. Paul, I'm not even going to pronounce his last name. Paul Q asks, how do we know that it's the real Kenya Pasquanelle who will be on your show?
Well, that's hilarious because I don't know if you've probably heard it's similar. There's similar games, but oh, what the heck is the name of the game? It's over there somewhere. There's a game where you basically have to be an imposter and you have to sabotage missions, and I can't remember the name of it now.
Is that the Room with a Boom?
No, there's similar games to it. I can't remember the specific one that I have because my brain is not functioning, but
that's fair.
It's called The Resistance.
Oh, I love The Resistance. Absolutely.
I love The Resistance. Yep. I love The Resistance. And my friends always joke around that I'm always the spy. And it's unfortunate, but there is a very high probability that if I'm playing Resistance, I'm the spy. But yeah, I mean, there is no real way to know if I am the true Kenya Pasquanelle. I could be the imposter. I could be the spy. You know, it definitely is a possibility. I may or may not have the real Kenya, you know, upstairs tied up, and you know, then when I'm done with talking to you, I'll just kind of scoot out the door and escape. And
I thought that was going somewhere else for a second.
No, that's weird.
That's weird. Oh, odd.
We're not in that game.
Yeah. So, well, I think for what it's worth that you're doing a damn fine job of impersonating her, if it's not really her.
Ah, well, thanks. You know,
Cole's calling us out again on Dirty Minds.
Cole's always calling me out. Look at her. Crochet something. That'll prove it. Code name Dirty Minds.
So touching on the imposter thing, Caius Wallen asks, is it essential for the players to be deceived to play a good imposter game? Or could the game dynamics work if the players know, but their characters don't? Does the GM need to know that a character is an imposter? Or could a player surprise a GM with their deception? Have you ever experienced trust between players to be hurt by an imposter? It's kind of a different interpretation of imposter, but I figure we'll roll with it.
Okay, so there's a couple different questions there. I think that I don't think the players need to know. I think keeping that from the other players, if you're trying to do that, is kind of critical because we all try not to metagame. But the reality of it is that you know something, you know, and whether you're allowing it to actively affect your decision-making or your thoughts or what you're trying to say or how your character reacts to a situation, if you know that so-and-so is the imposter, it's gonna naturally tweak what you're doing. So I think from the other players, it's important. I think from the DM, I think the benefit of always making sure that the DM knows is that it can actually help you in that imposter situation. The DM, if you're not telling the DM, then it's going to get to a point to where the DM's like, but why is your character acting like this? And why is this happening? And then why is that happening? And I feel like it can be without the DM, it's kind of you just going, yeah, I'm 4 kobolds in a trench coat, and then all of a sudden, whee, here we are, and it's just weird. Like, the DM should know that his player is actually 4 kobolds in a trench coat, So, like, I think the DM has to know. Could someone pull it off? They could, but I would be kind of weirded out as a DM if all of a sudden my player went, ha ha ha, I am not actually the half-orc barbarian. I am actually a elf who has been using the illusion spell the entire time, and you just didn't know it, and all of this is fake. Like, that's just weird. So that answers that. What else did he say? I don't remember. There was like 3 things in there he asked.
Yeah, for sure. Could the game dynamics? You touched on the meta aspect. Does the GM know? Have you ever experienced trust between players to be hurt by an imposter?
I have. One, when I was playing D&D many, many moons ago, before I learned about, the RP aspect of it and stuff, one of the guys at the table was playing a warlock, and he was working out with the DM on the back end some stuff. And then another player was working out that he was doing some underhanded roguey type thief stuff that happens with the DM in the back end. And we had never discussed, session zeros were not a thing back then. We had never discussed the idea that, people might be working with the DM in the background. And so then all of a sudden, the rogue guy tried to pull something off. And then the warlock said, well, haha, I've been doing this. And it came at this point of conflict. And the warlock was in line more with the rest of the party dynamics. And the rogue was kind of acting against the party. So it became this situation of the players and the characters feeling betrayed, because so then, of course, the natural thing is, well, wait a minute. So you've been acting behind your back the entire time against us, and you've been doing your own thing. Okay, well then now we're going to kill your character. And then he got upset that his character got killed by the other players. So then his feelings, and it's this whole back and forth thing where, because too many people were doing too many sneaky things and that had never been discussed, nobody was ready to deal with the repercussions. So I think if, as a DM, if I were to ever allow stuff like that to happen in my game, at the session 0, I would make it very well known to everyone that it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but in this game, we're laying out that you guys can be working in the background with me, and there may be some things, and you may end up working against each other. And I think that that's really important, because then when those reveals happen, there's not that shock and that feel of betrayal, because the rest of the party, the other 4 people at the table, are going into this thinking, oh, we're a happy team and everything's great and la, 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 la. And, oh, wait, so when we couldn't figure out when we couldn't find the treasure, you actually found the treasure and you just didn't tell us? You went in early? I have experienced people getting hurt because a imposter was in the party, someone who claimed they were for the party and they weren't.
I'm a big fan of having secrets in my campaigns, my long-running games. But for me, the understanding is always that no good secret is one that is kept forever. Like, the only good secrets are the ones that are eventually found out. So you need to make sure before you start down that avenue of whatever secret stuff you're going to be doing, that you're okay with everybody coming to terms, or with everybody discovering what that is eventually. And for me personally, I don't typically like having people that undermine one another within the same party. Like, it's okay to have inter-party conflict, but not to the degree where you're stealing from them when they're not looking, or when you're, going behind the back of everybody and talking to NPCs about how their character is, doing something. Like, to me, that's counterproductive to the purpose of what we're doing at the table. The purpose is working together as a team to achieve goals, and I think that countermines that. But that's just me personally. So to bring this back a bit to the imposter syndrome, the version that we're kind of talking about here, I'm going to get one of the questions from my wife, actually. She asks, when you feel unworthy, is there a mental exercise or physical activity that you do to bolster your confidence, to make you feel more worthy, or to help you get past it? I know we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but it's more specific about there being like a mental or physical exercise that you put yourself through.
The mental exercise, not so much, but when I'm going to let out my secret now. I will be, if I'm really nervous about a game that's coming up, like I'm DMing and I'm really nervous about it, I will actually, I sit down and I grab my crocheting stuff and I sit down and I start crocheting, because crocheting is a very rhythmic, like consistent, even if you're counting the stitches in the pattern and you're seeing the progression of what you're doing instantaneously. Every stitch you make, the activity progresses further. And I'll sit there, if I'm particularly, even before a game I'm playing, and I'll grab an activity that gives me the instant gratification of seeing success. And to me, that's kind of a stopping way to kind of collect myself, because it's a very routine task for me. But it's also a way of, oh, wait, okay, but I can do this thing that I know a lot of people can't do. Like, this is like, look what I'm doing. I'm taking this yarn and I'm making it into this, crocheted AT-AT. I'm taking this yarn and I'm making it into this amazing blanket that I've designed. And I work on that as a way to say, if I can do this, then I can do that. So I I fall back to something that I'm comfortable with, that I know I can succeed at, and that the task is accomplished instantly and shows success instantly. Even if I just get 3 rows done, I've gotten 3 rows done more than I had 20 minutes ago. So, oh, look, I did that. And that helps a lot. Other thing is and I know this is going to sound so weird, but going to the gym really helps. Like, getting into a consistent gym activity. And I know people say it all the time, but even if it's not to lose weight, and you don't have to be building tons of muscle, and you don't have to become some sort of crazy, gym bunny and stuff, but the simple act of just going to the gym, and even if all you do is walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes, you did that. And that's something that you stopped and you did. It's healthy for you. It makes you feel good, helps you sleep better at night. But also, it's just, I did that. I did that thing. And it's something that you can gauge that 30 minutes prior to that, I hadn't done that today. So.
Yeah, I think that there's a certain part of our human psyche that that gets off on achieving goals. It's a completionist part of our brain. It's easy to compartmentalize something when it's finished and put it away. We no longer have to spend time and effort and energy worrying about that any longer. So being able to set yourself short-term goals and accomplish those I think that is a very intelligent way to build confidence and success in yourself. It's a good trick, I guess you'd want to call it that, to fall back on. So that's cool. For myself, I have some mild OCD about specific things, especially when I'm working or doing something creative. I like things to kind of be organized a certain way because it helps take a lot of the guesswork and the tedium of searching for things out of the way and lets my brain focus on the problem solving that I need to do in order to get it done. And I like routines because of that. So when I get ready for a game that I'm running or playing in, or one of these help actions, I actually have a routine that I go through every single time before I do this. It's not always the exact same order or anything like that, but it typically involves, making sure I go to the bathroom, getting my drink filled, getting everything set up ahead of time. I'm not entirely sober whenever I do this. And I make sure that, I actually do a little bit of exercise beforehand. It's nothing extraneous, but it's literally, stretching my arms, doing arm rolls, jumping in place, running in place for a little bit. It helps to bring my blood up, my blood pressure, and get me animated and excited so that I know whenever the camera rolls, so to speak, I'm ready to go. I'm in it. And I also take, this is very silly, but I take 2 cinnamon Altoids, pop them in my mouth. Same thing, gets the blood flowing in my mouth, helps me not stumble over my words as often, which I know is surprising for those of you who have been here at this channel for a long time, because I still stumble on my words all the time. So yeah, they're mental tricks, I guess, physical tricks that help me get into the right headspace for feeling as confident and comfortable as I can be to do the thing that I got to do. And to me, comfort is the biggest thing that is important for somebody who's running a game. The more comfortable you are, the more likely you are to be able to be your true, your true self, your true creator, your true artist.
Absolutely. Yeah. That, the idea of having things in a certain order and having a routine. One thing that I do before any DMing session, to keep it tied to the role-playing games and stuff, is I turn my cell phone off in regards to, I may not power it down entirely, but I turn it off to where it doesn't even vibrate. Because what happens then, and the way this affects the imposter syndrome, is if it vibrates and I get distracted and I grab it, I miss what's going on with my players, or I miss what's going on with the people that I'm role playing with. And then I start to get that anxiety of, oh crap, what's happening? Oh no. Do they know that I'm not paying attention? And they all know. And it starts to induce that panic and that anxiety that rears up again. So, by keeping my cell phone completely silenced, no vibration, nothing, it removes a distraction that, I mean, let's face it, we're all tied to our phones nowadays. It's kind of become a part of life, and it's nothing to just reach over and be like, oh yeah, oh, da, 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 and I'm on the thing and I'm like, oh wait, now I don't know what's going on. So yeah, I just, that's super important to me, to make sure that my cell phone's off. Otherwise, it just causes all kinds of problems of anxiety and stuff when I start messing with it.
Yeah, I do the same. I mute it and turn it to the point where it doesn't vibrate. I check it every once in a while, just to see if there's any kind of like super important thing that has to be dealt with right away. If my wife is, sending me a text message or something like that, or if I've missed, 3 or 4 calls from one particular person. But other than that, I don't mess with it. Same reasons. I don't want it to distract me from what's going on. And even though I play on a laptop, I close all of the windows and tabs that I don't have to have going for the game. I still do get distracted, especially if I'm trying to keep up with chat and, do things at the same time. But typically, if I'm running a game, I don't check the chat as often. But like with something like Dawnbringers, I'm
Mm-hmm.
constantly in the chat trying to engage with people, and my character's pretty much comic relief in that game anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time I don't have to be involved in the super heavy dialogue scenes, so I can
Right.
afford to pay a little more attention to the chat where other players can't. So I
I
totally
did,
understand what you're saying.
and I did think of mental exercise. This is something that I do that I remembered that I do when I'm dealing with about my issues of whether or not I'm good enough to be at the table with the people that I'm playing with. I always have to tell myself, okay, but they're good. Like that person is good. They're a great role player. Or I think of it as, but there's always somebody else that's better than them too. And I kind of run this down. And it's even like I kind of associate it with like names of things are not helping me tonight. Michael Phelps, the swimmer, right? That was his name. Yes. He won Olympic golds, right? Great swimmer guy. Great paddle. Just because the guy that got second place to him got second place doesn't actually mean that Michael Phelps is better than him. It could just mean that on that day, that guy had a worse day. There's always someone that is always better than the person that you think is better than you. And it's not about gauging like, oh, they're better than this or better than that, but it helps me put it into perspective of there's always someone that the person who I look up to or who I think is an expert or who I'm fearful that I'm a fraud around, they probably feel those same feelings. And I'll kind of run that scenario in my head of, okay, well, I'm sure that there's someone that they would be having these same feelings with. So it's kind of a mental thing that I always have to kind of check myself and say, yeah, but there's always somebody better than somebody else. Better is in quotations. But kind of realizing that that they feel the same thing. Like I said, the thing with Matt Mercer, that helps. I think about that a lot, that man, he's so good, and he still gets nervous about that stuff. So that's something that I do a lot mentally. I have to refocus myself and go, no, but there's always somebody better, but you're here to have fun. And that's the point.
100%. And that's the thing that I eventually realized. Whenever I started playing with Dawnbringers, there were people in that game, Scotty and V, who I had been watching on YouTube for years at that point. So I felt really out of depth. And I eventually just had to tell myself, look, they're here for the same reason I am. They just want to play D&D and have fun. And I know how to do that. I know how to do that. I know how to play Dungeons and Dragons. I know how to have a good time playing Dungeons and Dragons. So that's just what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to treat them like they're anybody else that I could have sat at a table with. And that helped get me past that hurdle. And now I consider them really good friends, and it has nothing to do with the things that they've achieved outside of that game. It's just because we sat down and had a good time at the table together. That's what made us really good friends. And it's a really cool feeling to realize that there's less that separates the people you idolize from you than you might think. And I think a lot of people get hung up on that, which is unfortunate. Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, that actually leads me to one of my other talking points, in the fact that I think what actually triggers that imposter syndrome response in most people is exactly what we were just talking about, when they compare themselves and their work to their contemporaries. Personally, just as I mentioned, I have a difficult time measuring my creative successes against those people that I admire within the same creative arena, the same context. That's definitely my struggle as an artist. But is that something that you have found yourself also struggling with?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. You know, I I've watched, you know, a lot of the long-term campaigns that you've done and that have been on like MTV and stuff like that. And I, you know, sometimes I look at I don't, here, I don't like world building. I'm not a world builder. I don't like planning out worlds. It's just not my cup of tea. The way that I DM is I am much more story focused. I am all about the personal plot, all about, and you know, I sometimes look at like, you know, I don't world build unless I need it on the spot. But then I know that there are people like you who build these entire worlds, you know, or even you know, Jake or, you know, Lloyd or anybody that builds these massive worlds with all these details and all this information and these maps and stuff. And I deal with that as that what I'm doing isn't good enough because I don't have these massive worlds built. You know, I look at my crocheting, and as an artist, as a crocheter, I see some of these people online that do these things that are just mind blowing how amazingly talented these people are that crochet. I mean, they come up with these, oh, their ability to match yarn type to the pattern they're using and have it be one of the most gorgeous things that's ever been on this planet is, and I do, you know, I deal with it. I have to constantly like, I have to constantly stop myself. Okay, so I'm not a word builder, but I'm really strong over here. And this is what I do. And I have to remind myself constantly, I don't need to have an entire world built to be able to produce a good game. And I have to work on that. I don't need to be making these insanely elaborate crocheted blankets that are using these, that are, because the things that I do build, I love to build stuffed, you know, stuffed little guys and send them to people. You know, I did Cole's little dragon for her, and I know it's super important to her. And to me, it's more, I have to constantly remind myself, like, am I making these insanely gorgeous works of art that you could hang in the Smithsonian? No. But the thing that I am creating is bringing so much joy to the person that's getting it that that's okay. And that's kind of how I deal with that. I have to refocus that.
I agree. I paint miniatures and build terrain in addition to playing, and it's also something that I struggle with because I see people who are painting these things that, like you said, it just boggles the mind how someone can do that, and I understand that, you know, my level of experience and talent is not in the same, you know, bracket, I guess you could say, with the people that do that kind of thing, that can do it professionally, for example, that
Mm-hmm.
can make money doing it. Even the games that I run, you know, there are people that make money doing that, and it's not something that I think I could make money doing. People who run very successful YouTube channels, who have millions of subscribers, that I do not understand how. I don't understand how that
Mm-hmm.
happens, and it's a struggle that I have. But ultimately, what I have to keep telling myself, at least the way that I deal with that, is fundamentally the things that I am painting and building, the games
Mm-hmm.
that I am designing and running, the channel that I'm producing content for, it's for me first
Mm-hmm.
and foremost. It's because I have the need to create something.
Mm-hmm.
I have that voice inside my head that won't shut the fuck up, and I
Oh yeah.
have to get it out somehow. And if I don't, I'm going to go insane.
Mm-hmm.
So, all of you, have to witness the things that just come pouring out of my mouth hole. So, and at the end of the day, as long as I feel satisfied at the creation process, that's going to be good enough for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it can be successful, then awesome. If a lot of people really like it and they want to consume it, then that makes me really happy. That feeds that beast that my creative side needs. But ultimately, as long as I'm happy, then I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, and I think that that's it's interesting because that's kind of counterproductive. They're not counter, but it's kind of just not counterproductive, but it's counter to everything that we're taught as children regarding creative stuff. So like we're put in art class and we're judged on whose paper mache dog looks better. You know, we're put in art classes and we're given some clay, and somebody is really good at doing this thing on the potter's wheel and somebody else isn't as good. And then you've got your little bowls that you made out on a thing, and the teacher has put pieces of paper underneath it with your name next to it. And then you see your grade on that, and you can look over and see, oh, I got a B, but Susie Q got an A. And it's crazy because now as adults, we're having to fight that idea of your art constantly being put on a ranked scale. And fighting that is so hard. And so to get to a place to where you're comfortable with, I just do it because the damn muse won't shut the fuck up and go away. And then being satisfied with it, you know, like I said, I make things because I get an impulse to make a thing. And then if it brings somebody else joy, it brings somebody else joy. Is it the most beautiful thing that's ever been put on the planet? No. But it looks good. And it made somebody happy. So it made me happy putting it together and seeing it done. I recently did this. I finished a blanket project that I've been working on for like a year. It's over 400 hours I put into this blanket. It's a king size crocheted blanket. It's massive. It is so big, but it's the first thing that I've ever crocheted that I didn't have a pattern for. And I actually designed the pattern in spreadsheets before I even started crocheting it. And I did it as a gift for someone. And that final stitch when it was done and the last part of the border was on was such a bittersweet feeling. Does it have mistakes in it? Absolutely. Are there things that I would change if I did it again? Yes. Am I crazy enough to do it again? No. Because that was like, it was crazy, but it turned out neat, you know, and you know, I put it up or I took pictures of it and stuff. So I have pictures of it still, and I sent it off, and I'm not worried about anybody judging it. I'm not worried about my art teacher seeing it and saying, oh, you missed a stitch here. You know, I'm not worried about whether or not my freaking bowl is as symmetrical as Susie's is. And having to fight that.
Fuck you, Susie.
Fuck you, Susie. Like, you're a bitch anyways. I hope your bowl falls on the floor and breaks. Like,
where's your bowl spirit, damn it?
Exactly. So I just, our art is judged our entire childhood growing up. And to now have to be able to fight that as an adult is so difficult. And you have to stop and look and think, no, my art is okay. Is it the best? No, but my art is good. My art is good, and I will get better. You know, and like I said, a lot of that also helps with when I go to people that I trust. You know, I do a lot of corporate writing. I write for corporate a lot, like corporate style writing, case studies, that kind of stuff. I did a lot of creative writing when I was in college, and I enjoyed it. One of my favorite things to do in college was to go to a bar and write, because I'd look at couples in the bar and then I'd make up a story about who they were, what they were doing, why they were there. And I would come up with these crazy stories about this bar or about couples in the bar that were just random ass stories I would make up. But you don't do that for 20 years and you like lose a lot of that creative writing stuff. One of the people that I really look up to in the AdTab group is Marquise, and his ability to, like, the scavenger book that he did and stuff. It's, it. And so I've sent him little things like, hey, can you look at this for me? Like, just give me your thoughts. And he pointed some things out to me that from a creative writing aspect make a lot of sense, but in a corporate way, I would never do it. But it's something that I lost. But I went to someone that I knew, that I trusted, that it wouldn't be a judgment, and I trusted that it wouldn't be so I kind of went to that outlet.
I think that I talked a little bit with Tim. Had made a post the other day in the AbTab group talking about not having created in a long time because his work had kind of tapped out his energy, his mental and physical energy. And it was funny because that morning on the way into work driving, I had been thinking about creativity and the fact that I think there is this intrinsic need in most humans to create. A lot of that is stymied in people because consuming is easier, and our society builds people up to be consumers before it builds them up to be creators. But I think there's a part of our nature that has a desire and a need to create things in order to be fulfilled, to recharge from the everyday tasks that we have to do. The creation is the thing we get to do. And it's a way of expressing ourselves usually. And it doesn't have to have any kind of deep message about, oh, this piece of pointillism is all about, the Revolutionary War or the fall of communism. It doesn't have to have this super layered, deep meaning. But there's something that is cathartic about being able to just kind of vent our feelings and our frustrations and something that we might be wrestling with into a piece that we can then look at later and say, I remember what made me do this. Like, I remember what I was struggling with or what I couldn't quite put into words, but I did this thing. And this is what helped me get through that time, that moment. And I mean, yeah, if you can sell it and, people like it at the end, then that's, again, all the better. But I think that the real value of creating things is, again, it's for us as the creators. And I think that there's a lot of people that have gotten so wrapped up in being a consumer that they have forgotten how important creating is. And I think that's what leads to a lot of people in our society in particular of living lives that are unfulfilling, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually something that, is I deal with a lot in regards to, self-care is a buzz term, kind of, oh, your self-care, manage your self-care, make sure you're doing self-care. But it's so true. Even if your self-care is literally saying, you know what, on Saturday, I'm getting up at 8:00 in the morning, making a pot of coffee, I'm making an omelet and some eggs, and then I'm going to sit down, I'm going to throw on, I don't know, I've been watching Vikings again lately. I'm going to throw on Vikings, and I'm going to paint a miniature for 2 hours, or I'm going to crochet for 2. Even if you have to schedule that time to allow yourself to do it, and then not allow yourself to just say, well, I'll do that later. It is so important that that artistic release is there, because by doing that, you will eventually progress and you will get better. And that helps with the imposter syndrome because you can see your own progression. I know a lot of people that paint miniatures, and one of the things that they say is get a miniature, buy 2 copies of it, paint it now, and then paint it in a year so that you can
Really good
hold up
advice.
those 2 miniatures and say, yeah, I only spent 3 hours a week doing miniature painting, but even 3 hours a week over the course of a year, look at what I've done. Look at what I've learned. Look at how I've progressed. Because that is in your face evidence of the fact that you are becoming, this word we've been using all night, but an expert. You are advancing. You are becoming someone who has, your skills are advancing. You don't need to feel like you're not worthy. You don't need to feel like you can't do this, because literally here's the evidence in your hands.
Yeah, again, it's that need of setting and achieving goals for us. I think it is important. I think it's really smart to have a physical measure of that that you can look back on yourself and be critical of, even, and see the progression that you've made.
Mm-hmm.
To put some kind of quantifying measure on that is I think is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. One of the things that you kind of touched on a little bit, and I had a point that I wanted to make sure to get in,
Mm-hmm.
is there's a really interesting point, specifically in the definition of imposter syndrome, that for me, and it's the fact that we all have these external identities that we project out into the world. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Around us. For most people, those identities are slightly different. Within different social settings, you likely have one that's for family, and you have a different
Mm-hmm.
one that's for while you're at work, and a different one for hanging out with friends, etc., etc. But it implies that people are not wholly comfortable with being their true selves in all but one of those situations. And the fact that we keep a portion of ourselves kind of hidden behind a mask, and we're fearful that it might be exposed. In your opinion, why do people fear others finding out who they really are?
I think humans we're very social creatures. Even the biggest introvert of us are social creatures. And our group may be smaller, but we're still social creatures. And I feel like we put these different hats or different masks on to project these things because we're so scared of the rejection. We're so scared of being rejected from our group, from our pack, from our social entity, that it's it's I think that we all just want to be accepted. And I think that we don't want to be alone, because like I said, we're the social creatures, and that imposter syndrome is loops into this because there's that fear that if I'm not good enough and if I am a fraud, then if they find me out, will I be alone? Will I be rejected? Will they laugh me off the stage? Will they, kick me out of the group? And yeah, I really just think a lot of it boils down to this idea of community again, which loops back into what I was saying before about why I am so passionate about gaming as a community building thing and as a way to form bonds with people that you've never even met before. Because we can sit down and play the game, and it connects you on a level to people. You know, we can walk into a hall of 30,000, 40,000 people, and you've got at least one thing in common with every single person that's there. We know that if you start passionately talking to random Joe Schmo in the hall at PAX East, they're probably going to be okay with it because that's why they're there too.
Yeah, I think that absolutely hit it. The person that I am at work is not the person that I am with my friends. The person that I am even around my family is not the same person that I am around my friends. And one of the places that I can be myself is here, you know, on my channel, playing in the games that I get to play in. I told myself when I started this endeavor that I'm not going to guard myself. I'm not going to watch my language unless the person asks me to, and because of, you know, content restriction or whatever. I'm not going to hold back with my sense of humor, which is what I usually have to do in most public places. People find it offensive or don't know how to take it. And I never mean it that way. I don't mean it to be offensive. It's just, you know, I have a very I have a very loose acceptance, comfortability with human sexuality. I always have. It's funny to me. It's intriguing to me. I think there's a lot of hang up about it that is unnecessary, and it's fascinating to me, as well as being one of the best parts of life. So I wear it on my sleeve most of the time, but I understand that in most public situations, that's not okay. So I have to keep it in check. And the problem is that so much of my humor immediately goes to that when I'm in public, I just stop being funny. Most of the time, I just stop responding. I stop talking because I'm constantly checking what I'm saying before I say it, instead of here I am online, and I just let it all hang out. And, you know, y'all are just y'all are just angels for taking it all.
That's what she said. There you go.
Indeed. So yeah, I enjoy the fact that I can genuinely be myself. And I think a lot of that has to do with, because in my mind that goes hand in hand with gaming, like we talked about earlier. So I think it's important to let that guard down.
It is. It's hard. And that's why
it is.
Yeah, you have to. That's why you have to cultivate people that you're okay with doing that. You know, and as I've come into the Absolute Tabletop group, one of the things I love about the Absolute Tabletop group is that there's a zero tolerance in regards to being shitty to people. Like, if anybody comes in, I've only seen it very briefly once or twice. People come in and they kind of somebody will say something and somebody will say something snarky back, and it'll kind of start some shit. And you'll kind of see the Absolute Tabletop group come in and be like, oh, no, we don't do that shit here. Like, if you want that kind of, you go someplace else for that. Like, we don't judge here. We'll help. We'll be open, you know, and it's cultivating the people you trust, and it's getting to know people, and then even cultivating it down more and more. And that helps with that ability to drop your walls, which is very hard because, you know, we're older folks here, you know, we're not ancient, but we're up there. You know,
Speak for yourself.
I'm 42 years old. I'm old lady, you know, like I'm an old lady. And
are we talking about physical age or maturity
physical
level?
Open maturity level is a completely different story. Physical age. But, you know, you've had your beat downs. We've all got our baggage. You know, we've all got our baggage. The reason we have imposter syndrome and other things like it and confidence issues is because of said baggage because of bitches like Susie getting A's on their Potter's Wheel activities. So we've had our years to develop those walls, and finding the right people and the people you can trust and letting those things down it's really freeing. It's really freeing. If you would have told me, and I am not exaggerating here, if you would have told me 2 years ago that I would be voluntarily getting on the internet on camera and playing in games once a month for the game or every other week or whatever it is that I'm doing it. If you would have told me 2 years ago that I'd be sitting on the internet on camera talking to someone about not having confidence and about how to deal with something like imposter syndrome, I would have laughed at you and walked away, because I would have been like, that is never something I will do. Are you kidding me? You think I'm going to get on the internet so people can see me, so that what I'm saying is recorded publicly and anybody can find the future? It's never going to happen. Spend 2 years in AbTab and in some games online on the internet and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do this. I still got nervous.
That's
but
normal.
I'm here.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not about not being nervous. I don't think there's ever, well, for me at least, there's never going to be a point when I'm no longer nervous about all of this. It's just about not letting that stop me. It's about making sure that I conquer that nervousness and that maybe even utilize it, because now I figured out a way that I can funnel that into energy that I can use to run my games or play in the games that I play in. But yeah, I think masks and walls, we're using a lot of that kind of language. I think that those things are important in certain situations, and they do protect us from the kinds of people that might have hurt us in the past or that we think might hurt us in the future. But all of the strongest relationships in our lives are always the ones where we're the most vulnerable in. And I think that's not a coincidence. The reason that we are able to establish a strong, heartfelt, genuine connection with someone else is because of that vulnerability. And if we just get to the point where we can be more vulnerable more often with more people, then we'll find ourselves open to more genuine, heartfelt connections because of it. There is a danger. There will be people that will take advantage of that will screw you over. But you have to be careful of not letting that completely make you callous to where you won't let anybody in anymore. And I think that something like the imposter syndrome, I think that fuels the idea that we need to put those barriers in place, that I can't let people know who I really am. I can't say that dirty joke because, nobody will think that it's funny. I say shit all the time that's not funny, but sometimes people laugh. Most of the time it's me, but that's fine too. It's perfectly okay. So we have a couple of questions left that we came with preloaded, and then there's another one from Cole. I'm gonna get one of the ones that is preloaded here. Keel's not in the chat any longer. I think it's probably pretty late for him, or early, whatever.
It's he's at work today still. So yeah, he had to go into work.
So the last two questions that I came with preloaded were both from him. The first of which is, how do you try to be kind to yourself when imposter syndrome runs wild? We've kind of talked about how you might get past it, but how do you treat yourself? How are you careful with your own mental health as you work through that?
Like most people probably, I will mentally say things to myself that I would never speak to another human being because of my fear of hurting their feelings, because I never want to make someone feel the way that I feel when that happens. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So I have to it's this years of building walls, I turn it off. And by turning it off, I mean I will stop where I am standing when I realize that I'm starting to do that to myself and being super hypercritical. I don't care if I'm in the middle of my hallway, if I'm halfway up the stairs, if when I realize that I'm doing it, I will dead stop where I'm standing and I will literally tell myself I am not allowed to continue this train of thought anymore. And I will force myself to think of something else. I don't even care what it is. I don't care if it's, thinking about what I need to buy at the grocery store. I don't care if it's thinking about this, because I talked about it recently, but when I was a child, I lived next to a river and turtles used to come up, snapping turtles would lay their eggs in our yard, and we'd put a milk crate over it. And I will stop and I will use a happy memory like that to completely dead stop myself and not allow myself to have the train of thought. And that's just, you have to, because otherwise you will eat yourself up. And I'm not 100% perfect at it. I still get in. I have my own issues and I deal with them and I work with them. And these are just all coping mechanisms that I have developed with no therapy and like figuring out and just being like, I hate the way I'm feeling right now. How can I make this stop? Well, how do I make this stop? I make this stop by making it stop. So I will dead stop where I'm standing and just not allow myself to have that train of thought. And it's hard and it doesn't always work. Sometimes it continues. But I don't get mad at myself if it continues. What I do then is I make a conscious effort to try again later. And then try again later. And some days are worse than others. Some days I have to stop myself 100 times a day. And some days I'm just like, la, 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 la. I forgive Susie. Everything's fine. This wonderful starring.
Just break a bowl or two.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is really embarrassing to admit. I've admitted it to a couple of people before, but one of the things that I started a couple of years ago is I collect any of the written compliments that I've ever gotten from people into a single document, who they came from and what they said. And if I get down on myself hard enough, I go to that document and I just pick a spot and start reading. I call it my ego stroke. It's a stupid thing to do, but it's one of the best ways I have found to jar myself out of that line of thinking, of getting down on myself and telling myself that I don't, all this stuff about imposter syndrome, and that I don't deserve any of the achievements or the accolades that I've earned, or that I'm not as funny or as smart or as good or yada, yada, the list goes on and on. That always helps me. Within reading just a few of them, it's not necessarily the fact that they said something kind about me. It takes me back to the moment that spawned that compliment, and it makes me happy. It makes me understand, hey, that person felt compelled to reach out to me and let me know that they found that moment enlightening or entertaining or enjoyable in some way. And that stops that dour rain cloud from hovering over me, even just for a little while. So, yeah.
That's a great way to do it. I would have never thought of that. And that's really awesome. And yeah, I mean, yeah, you call it like your ego stroke and stuff, but honestly, I wish we all had a little magical book next to it. This would be a good D&D item. A magical book next to us that like collected all of the nice things that have been said about us. Think about your yearbook in high school, and it got signed every year, and you'd go through and you'd look for the special messages. Do they really? And then if people didn't, it's very similar to that. I never even thought, it's like a yearbook signing. It's this constant thing. And sometimes when you're dealing with mental difficulties and, just the mental strife that we put on ourselves as humans, because we have the capacity to do it more so than any other creature on the planet, it's having a physical way to look at that, it's like having those two miniatures. You know, I've got this list and here's the two miniatures. And I know that giving yourself that sense of purpose, like I know that that person got something out of that help action I did. And that rekindles that, no, I do have a purpose. It helps calm that. No, I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a reliable source of validation, if nothing else. Okay, we have one more question that came preloaded, for another from Keel. And again, it's one that we've kind of danced around and touched on here and there. What advice have you given others confiding in you about their own imposter syndrome? And have you taken that advice yourself?
So, I mean, I've never really had anybody say, oh, you know, I've got this, blah, 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 blah. But I've mentioned my own and they've understood and related. And so I've never outwardly given advice per se. But like I said, the thing that I do is that cultivation of the ones you can trust, because that's so having trust allows us to be ourselves, and it all loops back in on ourselves, and it allows us to have self-acceptance of ourselves. You know, if I trust that I can come to, you know, Cole about something and talk to her, then I can build on that. And I don't know, I've never had anybody go, oh yeah, you know, I'm totally have imposter syndrome. And because like we said earlier at the very beginning, a lot of people don't even know what it is, and don't realize that it's an actual feeling. I didn't realize until I saw Matt Mercer talking about what he did. And I was like, holy shit, this is like something I feel all the time. I didn't even know it was a thing. And yeah, so do I follow the advice? Well, it's always easier to give advice than follow it, you know? It's always it's always easier to be like, oh, well, if I was in that situation, I'd be doing it this way. Well, yeah, you're on the outside. It's always easier.
Yeah. Do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Same. I don't know that I can ever pinpoint a specific time that anybody has come to me for advice on how to deal with something like imposter syndrome or struggling with that. It has come up in conversation before, but it's never been a, hey, I'm struggling with this. What advice do you have? And to tell the truth, I don't know that I really have any great advice other than just the kind of anecdotal shit that we've spewed here this evening. And a lot of it is, again, just because of my own struggles with imposter syndrome that I even understand that these things might work. Is because they're the things that I use, they're the things that I do. So if it's advice that I've given to someone else, then I absolutely have followed it myself, because that's the only way that I think it has a chance of working. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I will preface things too, in regards to if someone says, well, what would you do? I'd say, well, you know, I don't have any children. So if someone says, you know, blah, 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 this is going on with my kids, I can say, well, I would have you thought about this, but I don't have kids, so I don't know. You know, I always try to make sure that I define that, like, yeah, you're asking me for advice, so I'll tell you something from what I see as an outside perspective, but I have not been in your situation, so I could be completely talking out of my ass here, and you could just say, well, she has no clue, and I'm just going to ignore her.
Yeah, and I think it's always good to pair advice with that kind of not speculation, but that kind of specificity. You know, just making it clear that I've never dealt with what you're dealing with, but if I was, here's how I think I would deal with that. Yeah, I've always had a very I've always had an ability to look at things very objectively, and that's helped me a lot even in my own life, because sometimes I can step back from a situation and figure out a better way to deal with it than to just, all emotion, everything is reactive and in the moment. It's been crucial for me through a lot of different of the trials in my life. But I like helping people if I can. When people come to me for help, when it does happen, I like to try to be as honest with them as I can, and tell them, hey, what you're going through fucking sucks. I know it does. Yeah. And there's nothing in the world that I can say that's going to make that change. But, here's some things that I think maybe you could try that could help you get to the other side of this. Because all things pass. Everything comes to an end or cycles out at some point or another. And it's just a matter of having the tenacity to make it through. That really is kind of what separates the people who make it and the people who don't. But yeah. Okay. We have one more question that came in from Cole. When was the first time you were in a streamed game?
She's such a good question asker. I'm almost positive because Cole knows I saw her whip it through in chat. She knows the answer. So I'm thinking it was I'm pretty sure it was your game. And I can't remember the order they happened in, if it was the Dark Crystal game or if it was the Haunting game for Christmas that we did. I'm pretty sure it was one of those two. She'll correct us in the chat here in a second and let me know what my first game was, because I have terrible time perception. So wow. I think it's January still.
You have 2020, right?
Yeah, I don't know what year it is. I'm lucky I even have a month that I can think it is.
Cole says Dark Crystal.
It was the Dark Crystal then. Yep, that was the one that came
was your first stream game?
That was my first time I'd ever been on camera, streaming, done anything like that. Yeah, it was the first time ever.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm glad that I was
scary.
The GM for that. No, it's scary.
It was but getting on camera and stuff was scary. That part of it
for these people? Yeah. I'm kidding. I love you guys. So that's awesome. That's only...
It's not even a year.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't even think that's been a year.
It wasn't even a year. Yeah. Wow. Yep. I think it was last October or something like that. September, October, something like that. Because then the Christmas one was in December, and I just know because A, it was Christmas, but also B, I was at my mom's house and I had my setup in her place. Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, that was that game.
Fantastic. Yeah. I don't think that question was intended for me, but the first time that I was in a streamed game was a game that Marquise ran for Brigade Con 2015. I had found out about the Brigade Con through Roll Up and Die, I believe. A podcast that Matt and Barker and Alex were doing for a while. It's how I found AppTab, and I didn't know anything about the Brigade itself. I just knew that there was an online convention where people were streaming D&D. I was like, hey, that sounds like fun. Why not? So I signed up for it. And stupidly, I signed up to run a game for that con as well. So I played in Marquise's game, ran 10 minutes over the time slot, and then had to jump into running my very first stream game immediately afterwards. So that was an experience and a half. But I obviously liked it. So I'm still here. Well, awesome. I
did see Cole. No, I saw Cole was saying, don't forget my question about the pool party.
Pool party. I think she asked if we were doing anything for the AppTab pool party. Do you have anything going on?
No, I'm not doing anything. And it's completely legitimately because of my imposter syndrome that I am not running anything. I will completely admit it. I have gotten much more comfortable with being on stream with everyone in regards to playing in people's games. Actually running a game for the people in ad tab and all these people that like I look up to so much as role players. Yeah, I'm working on it. Maybe not this one, but next one. Next one I'll do something. Next one I'll have enough. I'll be there. But I just yeah. So that was no. I'm not doing anything for it. I'm going to be doing what I always do best and playing the ever attentive and chatty and question asking cheerleader in all of the streams everywhere.
It is an incredibly crucial role, one that I know, for one, I am incredibly thankful for, deeply and sincerely. As for what I have going on for the AbTab pool party, the only thing that I have going is a rescheduled game. I was supposed to run a one-shot last month, and I ended up not feeling very well the day that it was supposed to run, so I ended up rescheduling it, and as it so happened, it falls on that week. So on Tuesday evening, I will be running a one-shot set in the Masters of the Universe setting. Using the Expedition engine again, which I'm really happy about because Masters of the Universe, the new cartoon, launches on Netflix like this Friday. So I get to like cram a whole bunch of Masters of the Universe into a very condensed time frame. And I'm very excited about that. So other than that, I think I have Dawnbringers obviously on Thursday. I don't know that I have anything else going on that week, but that's next week, and I haven't looked that far ahead yet in any real detail. So who knows? We'll see. Cool. I think that's it. That's everything that we've got. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There is one more question. Joseph asks, what's your perfect Sunday?
So I am I'm kind of a chocolate junkie. So for me, it's just chocolate with like chocolate and then maybe some chocolate stuff inside the chocolate. And then maybe like a little bit of whipped cream just to kind of, or to cut the chocolate. Or you know what? Let's do some chocolate with a scoop of like an espresso chip and do like a mocha latte kind of sundae thing going on there. You know, get a little caffeine going in case the sugar and everything in the ice cream just hasn't hit me quite hard enough. But yeah.
All right.
What about you?
As for mine, I'm not like a massive sundae person where it's just like ice cream with everything on it.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Neapolitan ice cream. I really like being able to try, a little bit of each flavor, or sometimes mixing two.
You like bomb pops too, don't you? Where the popsicle's a different flavor as you work down the ones that are red, white, and blue.
My favorite as a kid were the Ninja Turtle popsicles. Those were the best. The ones that had like the gum eyeballs. Yep. They always looked like they were like, Sloth from the Goonies, because one of them had like partially melted out of its face.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of ice cream. I guess if I was going to build a sundae, let's say strawberry cheesecake ice cream.
Oof.
With scoop of Cool Whip on the top, diced strawberries, maybe crushed up peanuts.
Interesting.
Ooh, better than crushed up peanuts. Crushed up graham cracker.
I could see definitely too on top of that, because what you're doing, some chocolate shavings, not sprinkles, but like actual shaved chocolate on top of that, with the cheesecake and the strawberry and the chocolate and the that would be we could rock that out. Definitely. Yeah. So before we go, please, one thing I was wanting to mention is that I have a favorite quote that I love. And
absolutely.
It is, I'm eventually going to be moving, and so I'm not doing it on this house, but my next house, I'm going to do this, and I want to put it up my stairs going up to the bedroom, as you're going up your stairs every night. And it's from Alice in Wonderland, the original book. And it says, I can't go back to yesterday because I was a different person then. So just, I think that quote a lot to myself, because I am a different person tomorrow than I am today. And so tomorrow when I'm doing something, what has happened in the past, it affects what happens, but it doesn't have to be the key point of it. So yeah, that's just one of my favorite quotes, and I love to share it with people. I can't go back to yesterday because I was a different person then.
Yeah, I think that's wonderfully apt, especially for what we've been talking about tonight. And that's ultimately, I think that's really good advice. Even don't fear failure. Like sometimes it sucks. Sometimes rejection sucks. Pretty much every time it sucks. But even the failures and the rejections that you have had already in life, the things that have hurt you already, they've brought you to where you are now. They've made you who you are now. And if you can accept who you are now and learn to love yourself, you are also accepting and learning to love those failures and those rejections. Just understand that the future will bring more of the same. You're going to fail. You're going to face rejection. You're going to face difficult times, but that doesn't mean that it has to stop who you are growth wise. It doesn't mean that it has to dominate your identity. Take those things, learn from them, grow past them, and continue to love who you are then. But if you don't try, if you don't create, if you don't play the game because you're too afraid, you're not going to grow.
It's true. So anyway,
Kenya, thank you very much for agreeing to come on and do this with me. Why don't you give any parting words aside from that wonderful quote that you might have, touch again on where people can find you if they're looking for you on the internet, and then we'll call it a night.
Yeah. Like I said, I have a Twitch. It's just /AesirSyn. It'll be in the linky below. And I also have a Twitter. My Twitter is mostly, when I remember to go on it, just me retweeting things for all my friends because I like to promote people. My Twitch is typically just my Sunday game that I run, and then occasionally a random thing. But we have a lot of fun. We're a really good group. The name is kind of silly. We call ourselves Hijinks for All because it was a completely random name I came up with for when I started teaching and started doing this, and they liked it. But it's a pretty dramatic game. It's a really intense game. But and yeah, so that's kind of the two places that I am that you'll see me the most. Otherwise, I try to keep out of social media as much as I try to pull away from it a bit, stay clear of it. Otherwise, AbTab, join the Discord, join the Facebook group. And like Cole mentioned, the first Monday of every month, we're in Lloyd's, I can never say the word. It's an Iskloft game, Varric. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's VREAKE, and we're over on CFTRPG. And it's a really good game. We are trying to invade land to take back our homeland that was taken from us by the evil people from the north. So right now we're just running around collecting loot and getting geared up and getting allies and stuff. So a lot of fun, a lot of good stuff. Good times, very good times with amazing people. The amount of talent in the people that I've met in this group is just mind-blowing. So that's it.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that as well. There's no shortage of not only talented people, but people who are also compassionate and supportive, and genuinely kind, caring, loving people. And it's hard to find a group of people where all of that exists at the same time. Much less a multitude of that, like there is in places like AppTab and MTD and the other associated places that are now starting to kind of grow from that genesis. Yeah, I mean, it's helped me meet people like you, and I'm incredibly thankful for that. It's afforded me the chance to get to know some incredible human beings, and again, like I said earlier, to be genuine, to truly be myself, put myself out there in ways that I never thought that I would do so publicly. So I appreciate that. Again, I appreciate you very much, Kenya, for coming on and discussing imposter syndrome for me for this episode of Help Action. And for all of you who tuned in, whether you watched live with us this evening or you might have tuned in at some point in the future, it means a lot to me, genuinely. Yeah, I love having people here. I love being able to take y'all's questions and being able to field them as we do these. So thank you. If you like what you see, hit the like button, subscribe, all of that typical business. There's sure to be plenty more. There have been 37 episodes so far. Hopefully there will be 37 more and plenty of games in between. So until next time, may your dice roll high and your snacks always be within reach.